Well, hello, hello, and welcome back to Week in Review. So, um, before I start talking a lot, let me just quickly check if and how terrible the audio is. Well, not so much an if, how terrible the audio is, and then we'll do our usual thing. All right, so I hope you had a very nice week, a very great week 16 in this case. So that's like what, 4 months now? Yes, if I'm not completely stupid. 4 months. So basically, we started exactly four months ago, roughly. So day 113, right? That's how much? I can't calculate. Well, not that important anyway. So let's talk a little bit about what I've been up to here with the drawing I'm still not done with, and I probably won't be for another 6 hours or something, at least in terms of line art, you know. So yeah. All right, so let me check this out and see what I can come up with. So let's start from the very beginning here, if I still have those sketches. I don't know. Right, okay, so this was the very first thing we did, or I did here, thumbnailing. Very basic, not a whole lot. You know, I was pretty set on what I wanted to draw early on. So the second thumbnail here was just a way of exploring the idea of these two characters, you know. And I'm sure number two would have actually allowed me to draw them more in line with the characters' like personality, you know, because you can convey a lot of that sort of information just by how a character is standing, right? What are they using? Do they use a prop to stand up, as in, like, do they use a walking cane? Do they use their weapon to, what's the word, support themselves when they're standing? Or do they, I'm sure you've seen it before, the classic Templar Paladin type of stance, right? Where the knight in full armor holds the sword on the pommel. It's like, yes, I think that's the word actually in English as well. I'm not too sure though. Technical terms in English are a bit fuzzy for me. Anyway, and the blade of the sword is facing towards the ground, right? And it's in its sheath. Most often, not always, but I'm sure you've seen that stance. This kind of pose, can convey a lot of who that character is, right? And of course, there is things like, statues where you just try to make the person be more heroic than they usually are. But if we're just talking about poses of the characters themselves, a lot of information can be conveyed with this. So I'm sure with number 2, I could have done it a lot better. But I don't know, maybe I was lazy or something. I don't know. I mean, I might come back to this and just draw some other characters in this pose. I don't know. We'll see. I first have to actually get done with what we were doing here. So, yes, anyway, this is how it started out. Kinda very messy, as you can see. I'm still not accustomed to any specific method of constructing this. Like, I'm sure you've seen, and I'm sure you can draw the what's the word, parallels here, right? The box construction methods, right? Where you just go in and you just draw a box, essentially, to give bounds in a way for the drawing, for the form, right? And then they just start drawing within that box, right? I still don't get this and how they're constructing this truly, because I think it's a bit of a fluke. All the people that I'm watching use this method are just that much better than myself that I can't really tell what they're thinking. So it's always much appreciated when I can find someone who talks about what they are doing and what they are thinking about when they are doing certain lines, right? So let's say, like Mikey Mega, for example, right? Let's say we're drawing some sort of cup, right? Very simple stuff. Okay, now I want to give the cup a top edge here to make sure the form works properly. To even give it any form, rather, really. So now we're gonna make sure the ellipse is kind of working out, although, I'm a bit shaky because I literally just started drawing and the height of the desk isn't quite comfortable here. So it's terrible. Yeah, I'm not good at drawing ellipses. I should try and practice that a little bit, because it's a basic form that you should be able to draw semi-confidently, at least. Because I can cheat my way through this eventually, right? Where I just do chicken scratches, or I erase the line 15 times back to back, you know. The usual things you do. But anyway, the point is here, let's draw through the form to further our understanding of where this cup is in space, that it's standing on the desk. Right, so I just wanted to give a little demo, although a very terrible one, what helps me personally. So if an artist, just sits down and draws, I glean very little from that, as in lessons or knowledge, right? I can't make head or tails of it, I think is the expression, right? So yeah, I guess I'm more of like an auditory learner. I don't know if that makes sense, but yes, let's stick though to the specifics of this drawing here, because I didn't do anything in week 16 other than draw these characters, which frankly, given how that we started in week 15, isn't very far. But I do have to say that I like the progress that I've made a lot more with this than with ERB's fan art I tried doing, that I then abandoned basically. And I think a big part of that was just actually using space to my advantage by ground. And what I mean is this: I usually, and I'm sure you've seen this, don't bother with like perspective grids because I don't understand them. And I've recently watched a video by Rake, so REIQ. Let me write it down here. Let's go with Kivia. So this guy, I think he's like a Mexican or American or something. I don't know though. I have no idea. He sounds Mexican, certainly, or Spanish, Spanish. So yeah, take it for a grain of salt, but grain of salt with a grain of salt, whatever. Sorry. Anyway, I don't usually ground the characters, which is a very bad idea. Like a tremendously horrible idea. I can't even describe to you how bad of an idea it is to not understand the space around a character. And I think it is vastly more important to understand where a character is than what the character is or who the character is, what he's doing, right? That sort of thing. All of the details, how their arms are shaped, the legs, how long they are, what kind of clothes the character is wearing. All of that is by far less important than understanding the space the character is inhabiting, And I mean like the illusion of the three-dimensional space, right? Because if you just draw, right, and you don't think about these concepts about perspective, you will end up drawing what essentially the early Middle Ages artists would draw like, right? I'm sure you've seen some of those drawings, very flat-looking paintings, often, and it's where a lot of these, how to say it, mystical creatures that you see on banners, of the old houses and such, the kingdoms, the lions and such, where you're like, once you're looking at it without knowing it's supposed to be a lion, you're like, what the hell is this shit, And sometimes you would see some artists, right, have some supreme understanding of anatomy, but they don't understand how to sell the illusion of three-dimensional space on the canvas, right, on the painting. They don't know how to do it. So you'll essentially end up drawing like these people. You might have a different style. You might be more like, drawing anime characters like I am currently, for example. You might lean more into that direction. And hell, perhaps your line art might not look as terrible because you have different tools, right? Far more superior tools in some aspects. But genuinely, and I mean this, and I think I talked about this earlier in a stream. So, like, this might be 8 weeks ago or something. Can't say. Perspective and contour lines are very, very important. They convey a lot of information about the forms, where they are in space, and where you are in relation to them. So a big portion or big important part about, let me just rectify this, drawing, or perspective rather, is the eye line, right? Where is the viewport essentially, right? Of the drawing, right? When you look at something in real space, right? You have two eyes to determine the depth of the thing. Sorry about that. That was one explosive sneeze. But you don't have two eyes in the sense of, how do I say this? The canvas doesn't have the same sort of depth perception, right? And you're not putting in actual three-dimensional forms ever. Not even in a 3D program are you truly looking at a three-dimensional object, right? It's all a lie essentially, because you only look at one monitor, and what is shown to you doesn't actually exist in three-dimensional space. So it's always like a sort of illusion, sometimes very clever, sometimes not so much. Point is, if you don't consider how this illusion works and how you can implement it within your artwork, it will look very dull, very boring oftentimes, and you can hide that to an extent with style and great poses, or perhaps very masterful color picking, I don't know, or coloring, I guess, in that sense. But it will always look flat, and that's an issue I have very much, since I'm not using perspective grids, or at least it doesn't necessarily even have to be a perspective grid, but anything really that helps you ground the characters within space, And the perspective grid is just that. It's a basic grid to help you visualize essentially the angle that the camera is looking at the characters, and where the ground plane is in relation to where the characters are, and how that ground plane is deforming based on where the viewport or the camera is. In this case, right, we're looking at them from above, a little bit from the side, right? So in Kivia's case, we're looking at her back, right? And then we have to consider, well, where is the floor? Where is it going? And I had very major issues when I was trying to draw without having considered this, And so I can only urge you to try and understand perspective a little bit better. And I don't mean that you have to go and draw 5,128 boxes in perspective, because that's not actually going to help you that much. It's going to help you draw boxes in perspective, but unless you experiment and you actually take the time to understand truly what space in the context of a canvas, in the context of a drawing or painting, actually means, what you're trying to sell the viewer, essentially, unless you understand those things, your art will very likely look very terrible for a long time. And yeah, I had to make this experience. I can't wish it. I don't wish it upon anyone, really. At the very least, not for as long as I have had to deal with this lack of knowledge or whatever. But yeah, it's a lot of that's a lot of words to just say. Learn to understand perspective, grids, and how to draw in space. Ground your characters. Understand where they are sitting, standing, walking, running, fighting, whatever it is they're doing, right? Understand the space around them and consider it more important than the character itself. Okay? Consider the space where your character is in. And I don't mean the details of, say, a coffee, or sorry, a cafe, right? I don't mean the details of what a cafe looks like. I mean the room. I mean the space-time, essentially, of the, subject. Say you're drawing a character in a cafe, right? Understand the room, the space that you're trying to sell to the viewer. And that can only work, if you help yourself, essentially. That's also a big part of what I ran away from. Allowing the tools that I'm using to actually help me make this easier. And although it's not as straightforward with Critter as I'm sure some other drawing programs would be, in terms of like assistance with, say, perspective, like this, for example. This is essentially, as far as I understand it, Critter's perspective tool, and that isn't helpful. It is not helpful at all. I don't know how to make use of this, so I didn't, But I still need to understand the ground planes. I still need to understand where all of these things are going, why they are here, what this means, what this line, for example, here is supposed to represent. Right, and so, yes. I mean, in this case, let me think. Ugh, sorry about that. You could say this is like Spider-Man on the side of a building, right? This up here, this perspective grid is one building, the other is the other building, right? And you just look, and the 2-point perspective is basically 1 point is down, right, which is here, and 1 point is forward, since you're going somewhere, right? And just leave out the top side of any building so you don't confuse yourself. So the roof, essentially. Yes, I'm starting to understand this more, but I didn't until I had it, said, until I heard it, someone say it back to me. All of this sort of information. And I think that's like a common issue people have when learning new things, right? They gain a tremendous amount of knowledge, of information, of theory, perhaps even, right? But they don't properly internalize it. They don't properly use it to actually have it be part of their tool set that they then use to, say, create art or create a piece of furniture or whatever it is that they're trying to learn, right? They don't actually internalize the information. They hear it, perhaps they even see it, someone say, but they then don't go the extra step of actually implementing it. And for me, that implementation came about at the step of like hearing someone else actually describe back to me what I have already known or some parts of it. Plus, of course, the shortcuts and just knowledge that you have as a professional. So, what I mean to say is that I really, 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 really can only. Let me see if I can find him. Oh, did I not? Can't believe that I'm not subscribed to Reich. What? Since when? Did I get unsubscribed or something? The hell? Well, anyway, I can only recommend to you his or one of his recent videos. It's about a month old now, and it's very straightforward. It's called No Bullshit or No BS. Every beginner and intermediate artist is missing this. So it's like very clickbait sort of title, but trust me, the content isn't. The title might be like, maybe he's making fun of YouTube culture, right? Where they use these large red arrows and big circles, and then like this shocked, like influencer, the typical thumbnails and the culprits behind it. But yeah, I can only recommend to you his video, that you watch it and immediately try to use the knowledge. Whatever it is, always try to immediately use the knowledge. So, in that sense, then I'm also urging you to exercise not temperance, perhaps patience, And I mean this in the sense of what you consume in terms of knowledge. And there's like this saying, I don't know from whom it was, but it's essentially knowledge without let me think. Knowledge absent action or something is poison. I don't quite. So I guess the meaning would be like unused knowledge is poisonous, essentially. Let me see. Let me see if I can find this. Maybe I didn't actually hear it from someone. But there's a bunch of people, so I was like of the impression that I've read this. Maybe it was Carl Jung. That could be it. Beware of unearned wisdom. Essentially, they are all saying the same thing, and it's about really, since we have a very vast amount of information on the internet, or just in general, you must caution yourself to not, hoard this knowledge or wisdom, right, without actually using it. Because if you just have a lot of knowledge, a lot of ideas, a lot of like information that you don't implement it, it's just eroding your mind. Really, it's really just eroding your mind. So in that sense, ignorance truly is bliss, since being too knowledgeable about a thing that you don't try to, say, rectify, for example, say you know that you must learn anatomy and you have all of the muscles memorized somehow, but you don't use that knowledge when you're drawing or in any other part of your life, that information becomes absolutely useless to you. And just consuming more, say, videos or whatever else it is that you have to gain this knowledge will lead you nowhere, you know? And that's, I think, a general truth about pretty much any sort of knowledge. And depending on the context of where the information is from, the knowledge is from, and what you would have to do to implement it, it can be more poisonous than other sorts of knowledge. Like, for example, like I'm not trying to say that you should be ignorant, but you should be careful about just sitting there for hours on end, watching YouTube videos, scrolling through like shorts of like art YouTube or whatever, or any website for that matter, Pinterest, for example, to get ideas and not use any of that knowledge, you know? So try to just draw, have fun while you're drawing as much as you can. Ignore everything else, the technicality of your skill, the composition of the art piece, how much or how little color you used, you know. Don't care about any of that. Don't care about any of it. Try and have fun first. So that means drawing things that you find interesting, that you find to be fun. That could just be drawing fan art of a show that you really like, that makes you chuckle. And that might change tomorrow, you know? I don't know. I have no idea. For me, for example, I really like mechs. I really like guns. I really like swords. I really like the idea of heroic stories and that sort of thing. So that's what I want to draw most of all. On the other hand, I've also started this whole art journey because of High School of the Dead, essentially. Because I have this like idea that I want to, you know, create, that I want to realize is the word. Which is why I also find drawing these sorts of characters very interesting. Let me see if I can actually find them. You know, I find all of this very interesting and very fun. The only limiting factor I really have is that I can't stand at this desk for a very long time. And I can't really sit on the chair for a very long time. So, you know, try to be mindful, have fun. And then when you run into an issue, fix it on the fly. Find out, say, you want to draw a character. You really love drawing, I don't know, characters from Gravity Falls, right? But you just can't get the clothing right. They just always look off. And instead of getting frustrated, that's the point in time where you just go look on the internet. How do you draw folds from, I don't know, sweaters or whatever, right? Say you're drawing Mabel. Or how do you draw like a hat, or like what's a baseball cap, basically, right? Since you're drawing, what's his name? Mabel and Dipper, right? Dipper. Try and fix your mistakes in this sort of manner, but try to have fun and try different mediums if you can, you know? So how should I say this? Try sketching instead of trying to produce like perfect line art. Like I'm forcing myself here to, although it's not so much a forcing. It's I really enjoy this. I really enjoy doing it. So yes. Mm, trying to think about what else to talk about here. Let me just drink some water for a second. Okay, so um, right. What I've noticed now, going back to be a bit more specific about this art work here, is the difference here in line weights. If you observe Psycho for a second here, let me just get rid of Kiwiya. Well, actually, I think she's a good reference point. Let's just leave the arm here. So, if we just compare the arms, right? If you look at the right side and the left side, there's a massive difference, right? Not only because her arm is out of proportion, which I haven't fixed yet, but I will get around to it. I just didn't want to distract myself too much because I that happens to me often if you've ever heard me talk, right? For example, tangents are apparently like some sort of innate ability of Austrians, because whenever I'm watching Kiara, there's so many like parallels that I see. I don't know, maybe she's just similar to me in character, but it kind of feels like I've made a lot of these sort of experiences in Austria, you know? Someone who's grown up here, so maybe I'm just imagining things. Anyway, so let's talk a bit more about this here. So what I would really want to be mindful of is just that I, you know, keep the line art very similar when I'm drawing. Why is this on 25 again? 056 enter. All right, okay. And I've not really managed to do this here. As you can see, the artwork looks very different from these two characters, which is obviously unacceptable for it being within the same image. Although I guess you could make it work, certainly. Like I can see an angle where you are purposefully choosing different art styles to represent two characters within the same image, right? I'm sure there's people who've done this, and I'm sure there's a way to do this tastefully. But, and that's important, especially for myself, since I think I'm more of like an intuitive artist, is that I have to be conscious of the decisions that I make. So I have to slow myself down a bit and be honest to myself about what it is that I'm doing so that I stay in not necessarily control, but so that I pull the subconscious decision making a little bit more to the forefront to get myself to, how should I say this? Just be more conscious of them, of the decisions, of the choices that I make. Because as I've said earlier, right? How should I say this? It helps me immensely if someone talks about their process, right? So I think I have a lot to gain by just mm, externalizing. I think that's the word. Externalizing the subconscious like decision making here as best as I can. Obviously, I'm not like some sort of, I don't know, guru. I'm not some sort of Taoist, Buddhist like monk. It's like spending 15,000 hours meditating to find inner peace or something, and understand the subconscious. Like I'm not, yeah, not talking about that. Just pulling a little bit of this to the forefront by just talking to myself, for example, while I'm drawing. And I'm trying to do it more often, but when I'm really focused, I just don't. And that can be, in the long term, I think, detrimental because the decision making is less obvious to me. So I have issues replicating the output since I don't truly understand the input, right? I hope that makes sense. So that's something I certainly have to be wary of, and which is the reason why I am going to redo Psycho's line weights, basically, but line art in general. And some proportional things, of course, I will have to change. But first of all, I want to get done with Kivia. I want to just finish her off before I start something new here, in a way, So that's what we're going to be doing today. A little bit, not too much. I can't say how long I'm going to be here. Might be up to an hour. If we're lucky, longer. Can't make any promise though. I'm not feeling like the greatest. Like I'm certainly not. What's the expression? Like not on top of my game, I think. Or yeah, a game. It's not whatever. You know what I mean. So yeah, this might be very short. What I will be trying for today is going to be drawing more clothing folds here. Since Kivia is actually wearing like some sort of, not skin tight, but some sort of like pants and shirt, as you can see here. Like this is supposed to be some sort of shirt. But, I'm not really good at drawing any of the clothing folds at all. I have no idea how to do this well. I've watched like I think a video from Mikey Mega Mega about the basics, which is essentially just think of it as triangles, and try to keep the areas where the clothes are being pinched in mind, and where they are resting on the body, on the form. For example, when you're wearing a shirt, right, the weight of the shirt is on your shoulders, right? So up here, which creates, I don't remember the technical term, but like a point essentially from where the folds originate from, or where they lead to, in a way. I hope I'm not misremembering this. But it's essentially just keeping in mind that your clothes are also affected by gravity. And depending on where that point of contact is between the thing that's holding the clothing and the item itself, decides how much, where to, and essentially just why the clothing item is folding in on itself, right? So depending on the material, it folds differently, it falls and hangs differently. Depending on, the size of the forms beneath it. There's more or less pinch. All these sorts of things, and you just try to keep it simple. And when I'm drawing like folds, I'm now trying to give them some sort of triangular shape, as you can see on Kivia's arm here, and on her back rather here towards the waistline. So sorry about that. Yeah, I think it's enough yapping though. Not sure I talked about everything, but I spent so much time just talking about random shit. I hope there was any sort of useful information for you in this. I really have to catch myself, from going on too many different tangents. And like, what's the word? Boxing? No. Just keep myself from constructing too complex sentences because I confuse myself with them. So yeah, don't worry, guys. If you don't understand whatever it is I'm saying, yeah, I'm with you on that. This is mostly just subconscious, brain rot, really. So yeah, hope there was some information that you can make use of. Again, let me emphasize how important it is to understand the space that the characters inhabit when you're drawing. Don't make the same mistakes that I make. Or hell, you know what? Fuck it. Do make all of the same mistakes. And then look how I try to rectify them. Whatever. Honestly, don't care. Go ahead. You will learn something, I'm sure. Potentially. Maybe. I hope. I don't know. I have no idea. But yeah, try just to be a bit more introspective. And hell, if you have to talk to yourself, or write the stuff down that you think is important to remember. Or rather, always write it down. It's more convenient, and your brain will thank you for it. If you don't have to constantly remember what you're doing wrong, where your mistakes are, and what you have been doing to rectify them, but you can just look it up, you can just reread it, your mind can concentrate on new issues, on new problems, and on new, different avenues of solving those, So the issue is just really, if you're keeping all of the old stuff in your mind, there's very little space for new stuff, and you will just end up hindering the old problems from being solved, as well as the new problems even being recognized, because you have just that much less processing power if you want to be technical about it. But yeah, I want to draw now. My throat is a bit dry already from all the yapping. I'm starting to just cough a lot. So yeah, I have to be a bit more careful about just my voice, my throat, and all that. So yeah, keep yourselves healthy. Cook your own food, if you can, from scratch. Well, not complete scratch. You don't have to create the universe, but at least buy potatoes when you want to have fries, right? And cut them yourself, freeze them yourself, salt them yourself, and fry them in the oil that you have chosen. So yeah, control the variables is what I'm saying. Your later stages in life will certainly thank you for it. Anyway, I'm gonna go draw now. So again, I hope there was something useful. I'll probably not talk to you again at the end of the stream. So yeah, I wish you a very nice rest of your day. I hope you have a lot of fun when you're drawing. Really, that is something I wish upon everyone who is drawing or trying to start out. And yeah, temper your expectations. You know, you're a beginner as much as I am. It might perhaps sometimes look like I know what I'm doing. For the most part, I don't. I just try and draw things that look nice, and I try to draw things that interest me. So, if there is no other difference between the two of us in terms of mentality, um, copy the method. You know, if you can't go forward, find someone who's further ahead and see if you can glean some knowledge. So, yeah, anyway, I'm gonna be going now, drawing. So, I'll probably see you next time or at the end of the stream. We'll see then. Have a nice rest of your day.